protecting your mind. There ain't no reason for the fantasize. No moments human, that's so real life.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Comments from the Peanut Gallery podcast. I'm joined here by a special guest out of Port City MMA. I'm with Mark Kolker. Mark, how you doing, man?
Good, man. Good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, appreciate you taking the time. Mark, real quick, just so everybody out there listening and knows where to follow and get some updates on where your career is at. Where can people follow you online?
So my Facebook is just Mark Kolker, my name. Kolker spelled Kolker. On Instagram, just that in reverse, Kolker Mark, one word. And if you have Snapchat, add me on Snapchat. It's Kolk, KOLK52. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely, man. Any sponsors, anybody along those lines that you want to throw a shout out to?
Yeah, real quick, I'd like to throw a shout out to Rock and Roll Sushi. They've been sponsoring me since my first pro fight. R. James Construction, and Susan Bentley. I'd like to throw a shout out to her as being a sponsor too.
Okay. Awesome, man. Awesome. So Mark, right now, just tell us a little bit more about you, man. What's gotten you to this point?
Growing up as a kid, I always liked sports. I never really did any martial arts growing up, but I always liked sports. Played football and basketball growing up in high school. And played a little bit of rugby in college, as only for a year. But when I got done, playing team sports or wasn't in school or anything anymore, I just love to compete, really, and so I wanted to find something to do. So I just Googled MMA gyms around and found Port City and just got hooked.
So, born and raised Alabama?
Pretty much. I was born in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Okay.
But I've been living in Mobile, Alabama since I was 5, so it's home for sure.
Gotcha. So I gotta ask, War Eagle or Roll Tide?
Definitely Roll Tide.
Definitely Roll Tide. Okay.
They're so good this year; it's ridiculous.
Oh, I feel like that's the same narrative almost every year, though.
I mean, it's true. But this year it's at a whole nother level. It's like no game's even close. It's ridiculous.
I'll be honest with you, I haven't followed too much of the college football scene this year, so I'm gonna have to take your word for it on that side of things.
Yeah, well, trust me, they're good.
You ever go to games at all?
I've been to a couple. I actually went to University of Alabama just for a year. So I went to a couple games while I was up there. It was a fun experience, but I was having a little too much fun and spending a lot of money, so I had to leave.
Well, that's totally understandable. I mean, I can only imagine what it was like at a big school like that, especially with having that big of a crowd or an atmosphere for athletic events.
Oh yeah, it was intense.
Yeah, definitely, man. So, about stylistically training, what do you see yourself as? What style of fighter do you call yourself? Are you freestyle? Are you more of a a kickboxer? What are you rocking with?
I call myself an MMA fighter. I like to think, I'm pretty well rounded. Kind of a good thing for me, being that I never really did any martial arts growing up, is that when I came in, I didn't really have a base in anything, so I was able just to start, fresh from everything, and kind of I feel like everything's kind of just been building together. My Jiu-Jitsu is, it's pretty solid. I'm a purple belt. My wrestling's good, and I feel like I've got pretty good striking. But if I had to choose one, I would definitely say the striking aspect. That's the most fun part to me.
Yeah, like the what would you say as far? Are you liking punching? Are you an elbows guy?
So I'm more of a boxer.
Okay.
I like throwing kicks and Muay Thai and clinch and all that, but just that that just beautiful boxing to me is, where you can counter and make people slip, come back with it, and, head movement, and boxing, that sweet science is fun to me.
Yeah, totally understandable there. I mean, who doesn't love seeing some of that good sweet science action, crisp
man.
on the in and out?
I can watch Lomachenko highlights like all day.
Oh, big time, man! The Matrix. That guy is just he's next level. I got I would love to see I would love to see him take that next step as far as competition. In one of these next fights. It's just kind of crazy though because he's so small. Like you don't think it's a big difference, but it is in the boxing world. From where some the next guys like your Danny Garcias and all of them are at.
Yeah, it's a big gap. But I mean, I don't know if it was his last fight, but when he fought I'm drawing a blank now. His last name starts with R, the Cuban guy, Cuban boxer.
Yep.
Rigatón
or something else. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so he's an undefeated, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, and Lomachenko just it was not even close. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. It was nuts.
No, he completely outclassed him, and then in his next fight after that, where he bumped up a class. I mean, you could tell, that was where he got. I think it was in the 6th round, something like that, where he got stuck and he got put on his ass for a second. But I think it was maybe enough for because he was so crisp after that point. It was enough of a wake up call for him to say oh shit, I'm still human. I can still get caught.
Well, it's funny you say that because I get the same sense when I watch him. It's he's just so confident in his abilities that he does all this movement. He looks so good, and every now and then you'll see him get hit. He's oh, okay, let me bring it back a little bit, and it's I feel like I've noticed that too watching him fight.
It's almost like Silva-esque, Anderson Silva-esque, except for I mean, hey, every now and then when you play with fire, you get burned. Chris Weidman clipped him and caught him.
Yeah, well, like you said, that was the thing with Silva. I feel like Silva was so good. He was all right, I know I'm better than the next guy, so let me experiment a little bit and let me try new things, but. That's a dangerous game to play. Like you said, you could get caught.
Exactly. Well, because I mean, let's be real about it. As I love Anderson Silva, don't get me wrong, but a couple of those fights within his title reign and run were kind of snooze fest.
Yeah.
They weren't exactly the most entertaining fights, so maybe that was him. Getting to that point. Well, okay, I got to start doing a little bit more, trying to be a little bit more flashy, so that it's not. Deemed as that, but then again, like I say, you start doing that the way that he was, leaving his head out there, almost taunting him. Well, hey, you got to give credit to Weidman.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. Talk about Weidman, man. Talk about a guy whose career is just taken at 180, man. It's it's unfortunate.
I agree, and I feel like for him, for Chris's sake, it's the last fight was not the worst thing in the obviously until he got knocked out. I mean he was 2 minutes 2.5 minutes away from winning that fight by decision.
Yeah, but I thought he looked good. Yeah, he was winning the fight, and. When I say 180, not like he's terrible now. He's just had a rough break here his last couple fights.
Exactly.
That goes. So.
It's 3. I think that's his last. He's lost 3 of his last 4. He beat Gastelum. So I can't remember the exact order. I think he lost to Rockhold. Then he lost to.
I think it was. He lost to Romero.
Right, Yoel Romero by that knee. That oh my God, that was still one of the most freakishly athletic moves that I've ever seen in the UFC. That a man that big just flew through the air with a flying knee.
Yeah, Yoel's a freak for sure, man.
Oh yeah, he's just. I mean, that guy's carved out of stone. But then, the gruesome level and the gore to the injury that he gave to out of Weidman off of that knee alone, where when Weidman starts to, where he starts to fold over from being knocked out on impact from the blow, you could literally see the blood gushing out of his head before he even hits the canvas.
Yeah, man, it's a brutal game for sure.
Yep. But then he looked really good in the Gastelum fight. He beat Gastelum. And then, the Jacare fight, hey.
I was talking to Justin about this. We watched the last fight, and Justin's theory, and I kind of been thinking about it. I agree with him. I feel like this last little stretch, like he's been trying to strike too much. When Weidman first had that, that little stretch when he looked like it just, a world beater. He was wrestling a lot more. I feel like, and I feel like he's kind of gotten away from that a little bit. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there. I thought the same thing at times, but I also kind of think to a certain extent, or maybe with a guy like a Jacare, you don't try to use that as much per se because Jacare's jiu-jitsu is all time. So being that his jiu-jitsu is that good, if you get him onto the ground in any sort of way, you're going into deep waters with a shark.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you don't want to hang out there with a guy like Jacare for sure.
And in the instance with Yoel, yes, Chris Weidman is a great wrestler. There is I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but in the game, as you well know, there's levels.
Yeah, and Yoel's another level.
Right. So, when you're talking that, you have Weidman, who was an All-American.
Yeah.
Great. I mean, very, very few can ever say that they achieved that sort of status. But Yoel was an Olympic medalist.
Yeah.
So, just a different level within it.
So you got a good point there.
So that's where I don't know if against like those two particular guys, because against a guy like Gastelum, he got the submission. So he did utilize some grappling a little bit more where it was maybe a little bit more advantageous.
Oh, that's true.
And then the Gegard fight, that was just kind of weird, period.
Yeah, man, I feel like Gegard's really, what's the word, underappreciated.
Yep.
I think he could very easily be the 180, the champion in the UFC. He could very well be the best 85er in the world.
I think you're right.
He's definitely on a short list for that.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, man. I feel like, Whitaker, I'm not saying he beat Whitaker, but that's a tough fight, Like, who do you have winning that, Whitaker versus Musasi?
If it's Whitaker, if it's a healthy Whitaker, if he fights and he throws down the way that he did against Yoel, I think it's hard for him to get beat.
Yeah, that's true. He looked good. He's looking really good.
Yeah, so I think it's tough in that situation. The guy who really is on my radar, and I mean at this point is on everybody's radar in that division is Stylebender. Oh
yeah. What he did with Brunson his last fight was really, really impressive to me. It's the classic striker versus wrestler fight, and he looked beautiful. And so if he can fight like that against all styles, man, he's definitely on the short list for sure for the next in line.
At least somewhere in the ballpark for it, up there close.
Yeah.
I know that he's one of the contenders for breakout fighter of the year this year. So he has a decent shot at winning it, but I think that Lionheart is really the more deserving guy, Anthony Lionheart Smith.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, those two guys are both. I feel like they're in the same almost phase, where they're not quite at the level yet, but they're definitely something to watch,
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that Anthony's there. I think that Anthony could very easily, in any given fight at this point, he could win the light heavyweight championship.
Yeah.
I mean, and I just say this from the standpoint of who else has done what he's done. He's got 3 finishes in 5 months. 2 of them against 2 former world champions. The other one against the number 2 ranked guy within the division who also had just came off of fighting for the title and happened to lose to arguably one of the greatest of all time in DC.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's definitely on a really nice streak right now. He looks good, but I mean, yeah, he could probably hang with most guys, but John Jones coming back. I mean, you think he could hang with John?
I think he could beat John.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that stylistically, I think that he's a good matchup for John. I think that Gus is a tougher matchup for him than John is, simply because one thing that to me, John Jones, don't get me wrong, is arguably the greatest if we're talking all-time greats in that respect. But John doesn't traditionally, or at least by precedent in his prior fights, he doesn't have the heavy hands or the one-hit knockout type of power that Gus does. Sure. In a fight against someone like Anthony is a tough dude. He's gonna be able to brawl. He's gonna be able to bang. He's a much better grappler than guys give him credit for. I think that, like I say, in that sense, that Gus is a tougher matchup. But I mean, either one, obviously, very very tough matchup. But I think that he could. I think that he could beat either one of them. Honestly, I mean, he's 6'4". He's long. He's explosive. He has, like I said, his ground game is much better than he gets credit for. He won his last fight against Volkan Ozdemir by submission.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, he's a stud for sure, man. Hey, speaking of, we touched on it earlier. You said John Jones is arguably the GOAT. Who's your GOAT? I love having this conversation with people.
If for me, if there weren't such asterisks around John Jones,
yeah,
to me it's John Jones.
Yeah, he's mine. He's mine.
Except for the fact of there's just now at this point, like, there's so many question marks, like like with multiple failed tests, it's hard to outright give it to him.
Yeah.
I think that it's also I give the same exact thing for Anderson. I love Anderson, but Anderson has multiple failed tests.
Yeah, and who knows how many he got away with.
Right. Exactly, and then I think though too, and it's hard to say because he didn't fight in the UFC, but it's also arguable that in that division that he was in, through the time that he was in, it was superior as far as the talent pool goes. Fedor. I think that it's hard to say that during that time frame of when it was the UFC heavyweights, that was your Tim Sylvia era. Well, everybody that was running through that Fedor was fighting over in Pride was far superior to some of those. You're talking Big Nog, you're talking Kevin Randleman, you're talking guys that are all time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think he's on the list. I don't know. I mean, yeah, he did have some tough fights, but then I don't know. I feel like he had some fights that were like I can't remember his name, the huge Asian guy. I don't know what you're talking about. He Fedor threw an armbar on him. He picked him up with one arm. I can't remember his name right now, but I don't know. I mean, that's not a bad argument either way. I mean, I'm not saying he could very well be, but yeah, I think if you take out the allegations or not even allegations, the times of being caught, I think John Jones is the best. But who I think doesn't get talked about enough is GSP. I feel like he may be my number 2. John Jones and maybe GSP for me.
George is definitely up there for me. Definitely. I actually, funny that you mentioned him. I just saw a clip earlier, a highlight reel of him and Johnny Hendricks fight.
Yeah, I saw that.
I think that some of the big question marks to George, or maybe some of the reservations that some people have out there, is George had a very, very coincidental time where he got out. He got out right as they were bringing USADA in. So there's a lot of people that have the speculation that okay, well, he got out before he got popped. Whether or not that's true, who knows? But there's also a couple of fights where George had some very questionable decision wins. Like that Johnny Hendricks fight. Like, if you're watching, if you were to basically put those as silhouette figures and say this is person A and person B, and watch that fight, it's hard to say that, man, how did George win that by decision when
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I agree with the Hendricks fight. I remember watching that live, and I thought that Hendricks had won that fight at the time. I still think he did, but I don't think George got out. The whole USADA timing. I just don't see that. I mean, I could be totally just ignorant about it, but I just don't see him as a possible user who's trying to kind of avoid it. Because man, he came back and fought Bisping, which say what you want, but still a 4-year absence,
Mm-hmm.
and he comes and fights the 85-pound champ. Say what you want about Bisping, he was the champ, and GSP just looked like he had no holes in his game. When you think about him, it's like what's your game plan fighting GSP? He's got great boxing and Muay Thai, great wrestling, and he's a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, what's your game plan against a guy like that?
Oh, I agree. I think that he's definitely one of the most versatile that there's ever been.
Yeah.
And so the reason why I still kind of think that there's maybe a little bit more to it, just to kind of back up what I was saying with him with the potential out is guys back in the day. If you look at some of the photos of him from around like the early 2000s era, right around in there, or maybe like mid 2000s, this right before he got out. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the condition called gynecomastia, but it's a side effect basically of of certain steroid or anabolic type substances in the body to where you gain extra fatty tissue underneath like the nipple area, and so a lot of times guys will then have some sort of operation to remove it. I know that's something that back in the day, with WWE, The Rock had the infamous surgery for it, all of that. But it's something that people used to kind of point out in pictures and whatnot, that it looked like he had some extra little tissue down around in his lower pecs around like his nipple area. So that's just where I say that, hey, you know what, there may be could be some signs, visual tells, but also in that era when there was it's not to say that by any means that he was the only one. I mean, when there wasn't anything to test for it, you can't really blame guys that did either.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that before, but that is interesting.
I think that DJ's underrated though too in that conversation.
Yeah, he's in my top 5 for sure. My only knock on him is, which it's not his fault, is I don't feel like the level of competition that he fought was like anywhere near like what John Jones fought.
100% agreed.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like, obviously I think DJ, you can only beat who they put in front of you, and he just looks, he's the ultimate pro, champion. He just looks great every time. But the guys that he's beating, Cejudo is up there, Benavidez. But I mean, honestly, I can't even name like a lot of the guys that he beat. But John Jones was just beating like former world champion, former world like great, just back to back to back. And the whole time, John Jones is like 22 years old. He's just so much younger than all these legends he's beating. It was crazy.
Oh yeah. Especially like if you think about the John Jones fight, the one that always sticks out to me that was really that breaking out party was the Vitor fight.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure Vitor had the mohawk in that fight, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, like there were times where Vitor,
he was still like juiced up.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. TRT level Vitor at that point. Where his neck just basically started at his ears,
Yeah,
or just completely just boom all the way
yeah,
out. Mohawk just completely crazy on that side of things. He had John Jones in that armbar that like how John Jones' arm wasn't broken. I have no idea.
yeah. It was tight for sure.
One thing that's always crazy to me, I don't know if you've ever picked up on this with John Jones fights, and I challenge you to watch and look out for this, and I say this to everybody that I've been talking to about the Gus fight coming up. One thing that I think that John Jones does that's very interesting and very unique is that John Jones always typically in that first about minute and a half, somewhere right in that time frame, throws something that he's never thrown before, or he tries something new that you've never seen out of him before. So almost as if like a distraction.
Like we were talking about earlier, when he just knows he's so much better than everybody else, he'll like just try these little experimentations.
Right, that's where you first started seeing him throwing, the oblique kicks and those sorts of things, all in that way. So, I think that I think that he is one of the most intriguing guys to watch fight just because he's so creative.
Yeah, it's a. I heard Tim Kennedy describe him fight, and it was like I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was just like beautiful like damage that John Jones does. He's so creative. It really is like it's martial arts, but he's just so destructive with it. It's pretty good.
Oh yeah, yeah. What's your favorite John Jones moment?
Oh man. Well, him and Gustafson won. I've watched that a handful of times. It's such a good fight. I'm a huge Gustafson fan too, so that was just. But my favorite one or the most like jaw-dropping one to me is when he fought Machida at the time when Machida was just knocking out everybody. This new karate master who could figure him out. And John Jones was like, "Oh yeah, cool story." Like just choked him with sleep. It was wild.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, you can't really beat some of those moments where you just see like, was that real? Like he just did that too. Like that was a world champion right there. Like,
Yeah,
is this real life?
yeah, and like just could care less. Just choked him with sleep. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely, man. So if you were to say of any of the professional combat sports, who's your favorite striker? Who would you say? Anybody. I mean, it could be an MMA guy, could be pro boxer, could be a Muay Thai guy.
Well, I was actually gonna say probably he may be my favorite just combat athlete in general. Is Triple G. I am just a huge fan of the way he goes about it. He's just doesn't say much. He's just real deal. He doesn't really care about the entertainment side. I mean, he does but he's not like the marker. He really just lets his work do his talking, and he is just a machine. I mean, just was it like a 96 knockout percentage or something like that? I can't remember.
Something unreal. Yeah.
But man, I'm a big fan of Triple G. I like his walkout song as the White Stripes, Seven Nation Army, and I change my walkout song to that song just because I heard him come out that one time. So yeah, it's probably my favorite combat athlete. It's Triple G.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Definitely a good choice. Can't really blame you there.
No, yeah, and I love a good striker and a good power puncher. So he might be the best in the world right now. At those two things.
Yeah, it's hard to not put him up there. Especially right now. This day and age.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like right now, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Growing up, man, my favorite was always I love Roy Jones Jr. Man, Roy Jones
Oh yeah,
Jr.
man.
That was my guy right there.
Yeah, he's a legend, man. He's from Pensacola, which is not far from here, like an hour. He's just he's a legend for sure. He's definitely in the conversation. I think is pound for pound greatest.
Oh yeah, man. I always thought that it was crazy the way that he was kind of his built his build his musculature because most people with your arm as far as like the breakdown of how your mass is usually 2/3 of your arm is tricep 1/3 is bicep. He was like the opposite, like you looked at his bicep and his bicep was like 2 times the size of what his tri was, but it was just
Yeah,
that crazy like hook action that he had. Like,
yeah. It's such just a quick snap he get on his hooks, man.
oh yeah.
Just knocking people out left and right with just check hooks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, just him turn. Just you could just see him just turn the knuckle over. Boom. Oh man. Good night. Yeah.
Yeah, he's such a good athlete, man. He like he was the type of athlete that like if he would like focused to be like a good football player or something as a child, he probably would play in the NFL or something. He's just such a good athlete.
Yeah. I think that he's one of the guys who everybody says all with yes Floyd going so mainstream with a lot of stuff, but I think a lot of people forget how in the mainstream Roy Jones was back then at that time. Roy Jones had his own Jordan shoe that they sold. He had his own line of stuff within the Air Jordan lineup back then in the day. Roy Jones also had his entire head body bangers, I believe it was called. Their like rap group, and he had the album, and still to this day, one of my favorite pump up songs ever, "Can't Be Touched."
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I still listen to it before I like go to the gym. Sometime I'll like throw on a Roy Jones highlight and go to the gym.
Yep.
Sometimes I'm like not like really feeling like training, so for sure.
Yep. If you had to say as far as to give you a couple of quick questions on the combat sports side of things, wrestling or jiu-jitsu?
What do I prefer?
Yeah.
I man, that's tough. I prefer wrestling. Um, yeah, man, but then man, it's watching a good jiu-jitsu match is nice too. I'd have to say wrestling though.
Wrestling, okay.
Yeah,
Dutch
I'd say
style or Thai style kickboxing?
Dutch. Yeah, Dutch. Because that's really like the first type of striking I learned. Our head coach and the guy who was there running it when I first started. He still trains us. Jamie Mills, his background was in Dutch style kickboxing. He trained. He lived over in Holland for a while and trained with Alistair Overeem when he was still kickboxing and stuff like that. And I lived in South Florida for a little while and trained with some of the guys from like Hard Knocks down there. Henry Hoof's gym, and Henry Hoof, that's Dutch kickboxing, 101. So yeah, that was the first thing I've learned, and really the only thing I've learned is just boxing and Dutch style kickboxing. So that for sure.
Very nice, man. So speaking of Alistair Overeem, he trains out of Denver now,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he fights on the UFC Beijing card.
It's crazy to me that he's still fighting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never really one to say or to really want to, punch a guy's clock and say, you know what, you should probably think about getting out. But he's almost at Chuck Liddell point.
Yeah. Well, you're right. You can't, tell somebody what to do for their livelihood. But I think if I'm close to him, like if I'm a trainer or somebody, I'm like, look, man, I don't know, what is he, like 40 now, 41? He's around 40.
Close, he's older, yep.
He's got to be 40 or over. And it's like, all right, so and he's done so much in combat sports, not just MMA and kickboxing too. It's like, unless he really needs the money, I'm like, why are you still fighting for? I mean, I don't see him winning a world championship anytime soon.
No.
And it's just, and it's not like a being mean type thing or prideful thing. That it's no secret. This is a young man's sport. You only have so long before your body just starts giving up.
Right. Well, and I feel also in general, that just as you said, your body, you only have so much. You only have so many hits too. Your chin only has so many.
Yeah.
You can only be touched on the button so many times.
Yeah.
Before it just goes blank. Goes blank on you. And his last couple of losses have been by catastrophic knockout.
No.
So, like I say, just long term, I hope that he either figures it out or maybe starts to think about what's next.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Well, for sure.
Yep, exactly, man.
But yeah, Alistair, man, in his prime was a scary, scary dude. I mean, especially back before USADA got to him too, when he's just 260 chiseled or, whatever it was, 250 just chiseled, and just hit and kick like a train, man.
Oh, well, when him and Brock Lesnar fought, that was the steroid Olympics.
Yeah, that was, and he just destructive.
He came out there at the weigh-in wearing like that fucking Xander Cage looking from Triple X, like leather type jacket with the fur and everything coming out there. He takes his shirt off, and you have Ariane Celeste just creaming her panties right behind him, literally on camera right there, like.
I don't remember the weigh-in. Yeah, that's funny though. I can picture that perfectly though.
Oh yeah. Oh dude, just juice to the fucking tits, just completely yoked. You see them like staring down, staring each other down at the weigh-in, and you see Rogan and Dana in the background looking like, oh my god, these just look like two dinosaurs up here.
Yeah, dude. That's wild.
And then that was a straight ruthless point from Overeem in that fight too, because that's when Lesnar, it was known that he had like the diverticulitis issues and he was having the issues with his stomach and everything. Those kicks to the body, and that's when he was Ubereem. So he had that extra twist on the end of those punches. He had the extra snap to that kick, and then he just kept on going straight to the gut, straight to the liver.
Yeah, Ubereem just didn't give a fuck. He was just coming and, oh yeah, you got stomach issues, right? Let me just kick you, like.
Yep.
Yeah, that was when he was a just scary machine,
Yep, exactly. That he was one of those guys that definitely, though, I mean, you could tell a 100% difference once USADA came in.
Oh yeah. Is there any two bigger guys than like him and Vitor? It's just their bodies just complete transformation,
Hard to give you any examples that are more glaring than those two.
Oh, yeah. You know who I think got hit by it pretty hard too, and it sucks to say because Johnny Hendricks is one of my favorite fighters. Used to be one of my favorite fighters.
Oh yeah.
But man, he just fell off the face of the earth, man, in a quick amount of time,
And he just got knocked out in bare knuckle.
Yeah, I saw that. I heard that. I didn't watch it, but yeah, I'm like, but the fact that he's like even, fighting, and doing that, it's like, dude, come on, like it's sad to me, honestly. Like, he was a world champion at one time and just on top of the world, and then now he's like, getting knocked out in bare knuckle fights,
Right. And that, for me, it's just, like, what did you do with it, man? Like, I understand that, I mean, hey, fighters don't make the most money in the world as far as professional athletes in comparison, but he was a world champion, so he did make some decent paydays. He was still in the sponsorship era of the UFC too. So, I mean, if if there were guys that were just, around the top 10 level that were non-championship guys that were getting close to six-figure paydays based off of sponsors per fight, you would think that he would have gotten somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah, no.
It's like,
Yeah,
man, you live in Oklahoma where houses are like $7. So, I mean, and that's not to bash Oklahoma by any means. It's just it's a much lower, rate in as far as cost of living than in some places.
Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, I have no idea, but I would assume he has money. Maybe he just still wants to fight. I don't know. I don't get it. He must be hurting for money, I guess. But for sure, he probably. I mean, he's probably at one time was probably a millionaire in his life. If you look at like sponsors and what the UFC was paying him, he had to be making. He was in that ballpark,
Right. Like I say, I can't foresee, for a guy that was at his level, any other reason that you would be fighting in something like those, like bare knuckle that way. Unless you needed the money, I'm not either, but it's the brutality of it, man. Like watching those fights and just seeing how, like, I'm desensitized to it extremely. I mean, I watch hours upon hours worth of fight film every single week.
Yeah.
But that is just like, holy shit. Like that's pretty brutal.
Yeah, man. I'm not shitting on it, but that being said, I don't think I'd ever take a bare knuckle fighting, bare knuckle boxing fight. I mean, unless they're throwing a crap ton of money at me. But I just the fact that he was world champion in the UFC and one of the biggest names, and to go from that to where he is now, it's like it's kind of sad, honestly.
Yep. No, I'm with you there. It's I know that he's had some substance abuse issues in the past.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd never heard that before, but I could see that. He looks like he's like his hair is starting to thin real bad, and he's kind of like doing kind of a comb over thing, and all the weight cutting, and he's just looking like he looks rough, man. I follow him on Instagram and stuff. He used to be one of my favorite fighters and all. And every time I see a picture of him, I just like, he'd be like, oh, doing this, getting ready for the fight, and I just want to be like, dude, no, you just look old, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
You should just stop. You look just wore out.
Yep.
And then I think another thing that got him too, wore him out, is, man, he used to cut so much weight.
Yep.
And you gotta think he's been wrestling since he was like 5 years old, so he's been cutting weight his whole life. It's just probably just messed his body all up.
Oh, big time. But boozing doesn't help.
No, for sure.
When you're trying to cut weight that way, And in that respect, some of his struggles have been well documented on that end, as far as with the bottle that way, And another guy, unfortunately, that seeing some of those struggles, Stephan Bonnar. Did you see that video? Did you see the video of him pulled over?
No, I hadn't.
Dude, it's sad to watch. It really is, because he is so wasted in his car that he can just he's just like slumped and like almost sounding like what's the big dude's name in The Simpsons?
Homer.
Not Homer. The real big fat guy from the bar that drinks a lot.
His friend that always hangs out at the bar. Barney.
Yeah. So he almost just kind of is groaning and making noises that way, like they're pulling him out of the car, and he's just completely like drunk limp, and just sad, man, just real sad, because growing up as I'm 28, growing up watching the Ultimate Fighter back in the day, and hey man, how did you not love just watching some of the brawls that both, and from after that first time, that Stephan Bonnar and Forrest Griffin got into all along?
Yeah, man. Yeah, those. Yeah, Yeah, Forrest, I'm right there with you. Forrest was the first guy that I remember like watching, and I'm like, oh, what is this fighting stuff? Like, I like this, you know. Yeah, it's sad for sure.
What, I guess to ask you that, because you mentioned not really having a whole lot of MMA background growing up. What was the first thing that really kind of caught your eye back in the day? What was the first MMA moment that you can remember?
Well, yeah, I remember I started kind of watching MMA. I want to say I was maybe like a freshman in high school, maybe a sophomore. I was like 15, 16, maybe, somewhere in there. Um, and yeah, me and my friends, we'd go to like to Hooters on the weekend. Like we were lame kids. Like that was like, oh yeah, we're going to Hooters. Big deal. And man, yeah, they'd have UFC, like the UFC fights on every now and then. I remember we'd just be like watching it, and I was like, whoa, like this is amazing. And then we just started getting into it, and then we would get together at my house and like wrap our hands with like dish towels and like go out and like wrestle and like hit to the body in the yard and stuff. It was stupid, but yeah, the two guys who really who I remember like my first two guys I was really a fan of was Forrest Griffin, like I said earlier, and obviously Chuck Liddell. Everybody liked Chuck Liddell. But my first moment, probably the first one. This isn't my first moment, but the one that really stands out to me the most, back in my earliest like shocking moment, is when Forrest fought Anderson. And so I remember I was like Forrest was, I was a fan of his, and honestly I didn't even know much about Silva at the time. Like I didn't follow the sport, very closely or anything. And I know, I was like, man, this guy is supposed to be really good. This Brazilian guy, he's like really good. I had seen some highlights, I was like, and I was like, pulling for Forrest hard, and just how that fight went, I was like, I felt so bad. I felt like my childhood was getting beaten up, It was bad, but that was my first like really big moment that I can remember watching MMA.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love watching Forrest, man. I like that Forrest is still pretty heavily involved with it too. Out there, he's a syndicate, and then is involved with some of the different UFC productions with like the Boost Mobile Couch and all that stuff that they do, or they call it Purple Couch, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that as well. For sure, I'm glad to see them like taking care of some of their guys who really got it going for them.
Right. Well, because I mean, if you don't have that fight with Forrest and Bonnar, the UFC
Yeah.
doesn't take off to where it is, or at least in the fashion that it did.
Yeah. Have you seen they did like a show? That was a while ago on the 20th anniversary of the UFC, and they had like a little documentary they did. I can't remember what it was called, but anyhow, yeah, everyone said that fight, like the UFC at the time was not like, it was still kind of in the balance. It was struggling,
Mm-hmm.
and then when that fight was going on, and just people were just all around the country, just were starting to see it. They're like, whoa, like what is this? This is really exciting.
Yep.
So got it going.
Yep. No. Exactly. So I will always hold that fight itself in very, very high regard as far as all time fights.
Yeah.
If you had to say, I got to ask you, at any weight class in MMA, who is your dream matchup? If you could fight anybody all time, who would you make that walk against?
Man, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Any weight class. Well, I would want to fight, some of the GOATs, just because, obviously, even though your chances of winning aren't great, but just to say you fought somebody like a GSP You mean like now or all time?
All time.
Oh, okay, all time. Yeah. A guy who I'd want to fight with, for some reason, it kind of comes in my head, and it would not be a fun fight. It would be Tim Kennedy. I feel like that's one of those fights that would just be a grind. You know, it'd just be. It would be a brutal fight. It'd be like one of those like really like gut, like you would have to find something to get through that one. I feel like he was just such a grinder, you know.
Yep.
Really tough guy. So, but so I'm rambling. Now I'm trying to think who. That's a tough one. Maybe Chuck Liddell. Yeah, because might be Chuck Liddell honestly, because that's my favorite part is striking. So man, to like stand up and exchange with Chuck Liddell, that would be pretty crazy.
Okay. What about in your weight class specifically, all time?
All right, so I'm a welterweight. So people who don't know, I fight at 170 pounds. Man. Oh, you know who I'd want to fight? This is like the fan in me. I would want to fight. Or count BJ Penn, right? You know, he fought at welterweight.
Mm-hmm.
I would want to fight
welterweight
BJ
champion for that matter.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he was one of the guys too who he was one of like when I first really started watching MMA. He was one of my favorites, and yeah. If I could fight any welterweight of all time, it might be BJ. Might be.
I love BJ myself, man.
Yeah, that'd be a fun fight too. You know, because BJ is like, you know, he's that Hawaiian style. He doesn't mind kind of just making it ugly and just getting into a slugfest. That'd be fun.
Definitely. You know, speaking of BJ, you know, and just from the time peg of it, what'd you think of that Yair Rodriguez fight?
Against BJ or Yair?
No, Yair and the Zombie.
Oh man, yeah, that was a great fight, but the finish, it might be the best finish of all time. The no look back elbow. It's like something you see out of a movie. I wish I would have put money on the fight because I was thinking about like I was gonna go put some money on Yair, but I just ended up doing it. But people say though that you know, and Zombie was actually ahead on the scorecards before the knockout. But I think Yair is that movement. He can just attack you from so many different angles, and you know, the Korean Zombie, he doesn't really, you know, he's not doing a lot of tricky stuff. He's just coming forward. So I thought Yair could win that fight, and but yeah, that was really something to watch for sure.
Yo, the thing that kind of you know, Chael Sonnen had came out with one of his videos, and it was like, well, I've been in the business since the late 1990s, and I've never seen that thrown anything. You know, talking about that elbow. I say, Chael, sounds like an uninformed stance because Cowboy threw that against Jeremy Stevens back in like 2012 when they fought.
Oh yeah.
He threw that in like 2012 from it, and that also being said, Yair said that he learned it from Cowboy, because if anybody knows that storyline of them training through these last few months, Yair has been training with Cowboy. He's gone out to the ranch and he's been a part of that BMF crew. He said that he saw Cowboy throw it, so he started implementing it.
Wow, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, so I believe it was in the second round. Cowboy didn't land it squares, and it didn't have the same effect like Yair did. Obviously, Yair threw it to perfection as far as the technique and landing it and just the picture perfect moment of it. These guys slugged it out for 24 minutes 59 seconds, and boom, it lands, hits the button, bang, flatlines him, buzzer rings.
Yeah, man, I didn't know that, but That's pretty neat. Pretty neat.
Yeah, so I would challenge you to look that up because Cowboy threw it. Cowboy threw it back in that Jeremy Stevens fight.
Jeremy Stevens, okay.
Yep, and like I said, I believe it was in 2012, something like that. It was years ago.
Right.
But yeah, I love Cowboy though, man. I'm a huge Cowboy fan.
How can you not like Cowboy? If you're a fan of fighting, I mean, it's hard not to like Cowboy.
Right.
You know?
Anyone, anywhere, anytime. I hope that Connor signs the dotted line.
I was just about to say that. What do you think about that? I hope that happens so bad.
Oh my God, do I hope that happens.
I wanted to see Connor fight Nate again more than anybody, but now that this fight has come up, I want this fight more than anything with Cowboy.
Oh yeah.
Who are you picking in that fight if it happens?
That's tough. I say this with every single Cowboy fight. Because, and like I say, I say this out of love and respect because I am such a big Cowboy fan. But you also come to know that there's two versions of Mr. Cerrone that comes out when he fights. You either get Donald, and if you get Donald, it's not a good night for him.
Yeah.
But if you get Cowboy, then get your popcorn ready because it's gonna be a show. And when Cowboy shows up. Cowboy can arguably be the best guy on the planet in that division.
Yeah.
On any given day, he can be. I think that if he really shows up, he can be the best guy in that division on any given day. It's just a matter of the consistency piece of it.
Yeah, I like how you put that. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, sometimes he definitely looks half of how he can look, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, Cowboy is another reason I think is really interesting about him is another reason why I like him is he struggles with he gets really bad anxiety about fights. It's crazy for someone who likes fighting so much. He gets bad anxiety and it just fight time just puts him through the ringer. Just all of his emotions are out of whack, and I like that he's open about it. Everybody knows. He doesn't try and hide it. He's like, he said, I just leading up to the fight's like just the worst thing in the world for me. Like he has a lot of anxiety about it, but that's another reason why I'm a big fan of him. Because anybody who's ever fought there's a lot of anxiety. You're going through a lot, before it happens. So, but yeah, sometimes it's like, sometimes he's able to just control it and he looks like, a world champion. And there's other times it looks like it gets the best of him, for sure.
Yep. And, the thing is with him is sometimes people always say, he's always so busy doing so many other things. How much emphasis or, how focused is he on fighting, all of that. He said that, he has a newfound appreciation for fighting now that he's had his son.
Yeah. Yes, that's what he said. Yeah. So, yeah, it's like having a son now that he has a family, he's driven now. It's like before he was fighting, it's like he didn't really, but now it's like giving him like a purpose, like a goal, So
yep,
that could be a great thing for him.
No, I agree, and I feel like his ground game is very underrated.
Oh yeah, for sure. His jiu-jitsu is super underrated. Super. He's got a lot of submissions.
He does.
Yeah, it's underrated for sure.
Well, you don't break the record for and also mind you, him doing it at home was even just so much more incredible. But he broke the record for most wins in UFC history as well as most finishes.
Yeah.
So,
I think Cowboy is a Hall of Famer for sure.
I agree. I 100% agree with you. There's been some naysayers that I've seen out there that have said, things along, well, he's never won a belt, so, hey, asshole, did Dan Marino ever win a Super Bowl?
Right.
Did Charles Barkley ever win, did he ever win the O'Brien Trophy?
Right. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the thing about fighting it is like you hit on earlier. Like, okay, he's never won a belt, but at any maybe a couple times that he fought for it, it just wasn't his. In fighting, you can win or lose at any moment. So he could. So you just never know. Maybe on the right day, he's a world champion. So, but yeah, I don't see how you're not first place for most wins and finishes and not a Hall of Famer. That doesn't make sense to me.
I think that one of the biggest mistakes overall, in my opinion, of where his career trajectory has gone, is after he has that absolute war with Matt Brown, and ends up head kicking and knocking out Matt Brown. That was a fight to where I feel like either one of those guys could have arguably been in contention for a title shot right after that fight, or maybe one more fight and then in question for a title, for a title shot. However, it was all of like 5 weeks, something only a couple of weeks, maybe not even that much. It was only a couple weeks after he has that war with Matt Brown that then there was the previous UFC Denver, and that's when he fought Masvidal.
Yeah.
And Masvidal, he knocked him out twice in that fight. He knocked him out in the first round that arguably could have Cowboy basically got saved by the bell, and didn't get put out. But the lights were on, but no one was home. And then comes out in the second round and just gets starched again.
Yeah, that's part of why you love him, but then as a fan, but then also it's like maybe it's not really the best moves for him,
right?
For his career, that to take a tough fight like that on short notice after a huge moment for him,
but then again, if he takes that fight and he wins, he's almost 100%. Probably the top contender at that point, and he's even his fanfare, his folklore, his legend grows even more. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you'd like to. You'd think somebody would tell him, "Hey, Mace, this is a good idea," but I don't. I didn't look at it. I don't look at Cowboy fighting like that as. I look at it like that's his thing. His thing is he just likes to fight. He just likes the rush, and he doesn't care. And do your thing, man. He's not worried about our opinions. He just. So I respect that. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, he doesn't care what anybody thinks in that respect, and there's no sort of contractual obligations for him to slow his other side of life down. I don't know if you saw the story or him tell the story on Joe Rogan's show about him getting caught in a cave when he was diving.
Yeah, I listened to that podcast. That was terrifying.
Absolutely, just terrifying, but. You can't tell me that once he gets to the very end, when he gets, it's about a 20-minute story that he tells of it. But when he gets up and he's just like, wham, motherfucker, yeah! Like, you can't tell me that you don't get an instant, jolt of adrenaline, whoa, after hearing him tell that story.
He's just an adrenaline junkie, man. He's just being himself, he doesn't care.
Yep. I'm hoping that in a couple of weeks I'm going to be out at Bellator 210 in Oklahoma.
Oh, nice.
So I'm hoping that he said that he's going to be out there, but obviously Cowboy does what Cowboy wants at any given time.
Right.
So who knows if he'll be there? But the reason why there's a strong chance that he is Joe Schilling is fighting on the card.
Oh yeah, man. They're tight. It's crazy. Yes, it's cool. I'm interested to. I didn't realize that was the card that Joe Schilling was going to be on already. So I know it wasn't that long ago. He said he was getting back in MMA.
Yep, he's been training mostly, obviously with Cowboy, but Mickey Gall's been traveling around with him. They've been going on, doing seminar tours pretty much all around the country in Cowboys RV.
Yeah. I hope he does well. I hope Joe Schilling does well. He's one of those guys too where he's like, I heard him say too on the Joe Rogan podcast where he's like he's done just about everything he can do in kickboxing, and there's just not a whole lot of money in kickboxing, unfortunately. So I hope he does well. But yeah, man, that'd be cool. I'd like to watch. I want to watch that fight for sure.
Oh, definitely. So like I say, hopefully bump into those guys and get to hang out. I've got shout out to Daniel Scary Carey. One of my guys is going to be on that card. Shout out to Conqueror BJJ out there in Ada, Oklahoma. Cortez Coleman, the Crazy Cowboy.
Nice.
So yeah, that's hopefully going to be a badass night of fights out there. I'm very sad that Melvin Manhoof got hurt and had to pull off the card. But that would have been a spectacle to see him.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for sure whenever someone has to pull out due to an injury for sure. No matter what you think, about him. So for sure, it's disappointing.
Yep, exactly, man. What's next for you, man? When do you have anything on the books? Anything on the schedule?
No, so I don't right now. My last fight was in September 29th, so about a month ago. Didn't go my way, but it was close. But yeah, so I hurt my knee pretty bad. During the fight, I didn't realize it, but after the fight, it just blew up. So I took a couple weeks off where I didn't really train any, so I kind of just started training back hard again not too long ago. And just trying to set something up for after the first year in January or February, something like that. Hoping to get back to it. So
nice, very nice, man, very nice. If you had to say, what's on the goal? What's the big thing to check off the list for you for 2019?
2019. So my last couple fights didn't go my way. One of them I could have very easily won. My last one could have very easily won, but didn't get the decision. So I'm really hoping for a bounce back year in 2019. I want to put together a good little streak next year. Hopefully, start getting in fighting for island fights down here in Pensacola and getting on Fight Pass and hopefully getting on a contender series or something like that. Start getting some bigger fights and so yeah, that's the plan for next year.
Nice, man, nice. Speaking of island fights, December 15th, I believe it is, Iron Mike Barnett, correct?
Yeah. He's Justin Osborn is December 15th.
Justin is the 15th. Okay, yeah. Justin is the 15th.
Iron Mike is December 22nd.
December 22nd, okay. I knew they were both December, and they were both within a week of each other somewhere there, just had the dates mixed up.
Yep. Yeah. They're both looking good. The three of us were our main training partners for each other, and so I train with them too, just about every day, and they both look really good. So
it's always good to hear.
Yeah, man. Yeah, a lot. So expecting big things from both of them here next month.
Yeah, definitely. Mark, is there anything that that we might not have touched on that you want to get out there for the fans, or that you want to share for the people out there listening?
No, not really. Thanks for having me on, man. It's fun. Just follow me again if you watch on Instagram. It's KOLKERMARK. That's it. Facebook's just Mark Kolker. Give me a follow. That's about it, man.
Awesome, man. Well, Mark, thank you very much for taking the time tonight. I'm always greatly appreciative of everybody who blesses us the time to come on the show. It means a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I have to do it again sometime.
Oh, definitely. Maybe do a big joint show. All the three of you guys down there with me here. See,
really cool.
See something along. Get crazy with that. I did one at one point with Justin and Mike together out here in Denver, and that was pretty fun. So yeah, we'll have to all get together and do another one sometime.
Good deal, man.
Yeah, man. So as far as on the comments from the peanut gallery end of things, just want to throw a quick couple of shout outs from my end of things. Want to throw a shout out to everyone from the comments from the peanut gallery athlete team. That's Yusuf the Moroccan Devil Zalal. He fights coming up on December 7th at the LFA card. Obviously, Daniel Scary Carey, just mentioned him, fights at Bellator 210 on November 30th. Selena Rowland, she's contracted with LFA and then has also fought in a couple of other promotions, is looking at getting back into the action in January. Austin Jones, one of my very, very favorite people in the world, Mr. Osmosis, that's a very, very genuine person right there. I can't wait to see him and what he is going to put back in action. He's strung together a couple wins in his last couple of fights. Fought on LFA, the card that was in Nebraska in September. Then also want to throw a shout out to my near and dear friend Jordan Titoni, one of the original members from the comments from the Peanut Gallery team, as well as Justin Osborn. So thank you to all of you guys out there. Also want to throw a shout out to Beyond Bridges Music as well as Lion League Music. Thank you guys for everything that you've done for the show and for all the supporting pieces as well. Mark, thank you very much for taking the time to come on. I really do appreciate it. Until next time, my friends.
I've been underestimated since I was a little one. When I get it poppin', I promise I handle business with the best of them. You scooping it up with a silver spoon if you say that you get it out the mud. Daddy's caddy money is paying for you to flex in front. Something's telling me you ain't never really sold some drugs, but you rapping about it like you actually about it, it's a bluff. You cooking up some dope, it's about time I turn the oven off. You riding other rappers' dicks, it's about time that you lick the balls. Creeping on the come up, don't sleep on the underdog. I'm walking with a stutter step, but first I had to learn to crawl through broken glasses, I would seem, but I always shot for the stars. But when arrow hit these candy rappers in they fucking job, but you ain't gonna spit it through the wire like how Kanye did. Handed everything in life, but me, I'm a top of ramen kid. Shit, my parents never bought any of us a fucking whip. Probably why I'm not a pussy. Underdogs eat from the garbage. Hey, yeah, I'm a motherfucking underdog. Hey, yeah, I'm a motherfucking underdog. Yeah, I'm a motherfucking underdog. Yeah, I'm a motherfucking underdog. Look, it's funny how this fucked up system stays watching over me. I hope you know y'all made the monster like my mama's ovaries. My foes approach and they get slaughtered, dropping on the floor to me. Straight comatose gon' catch your body if you're getting close to me. If I grew up starving with you, better know we gonna eat. Grew up hustling, juggling struggles, now we gonna feast. My ride or dies, I thank you for all helping me have room to breathe. Haven't weathered the storm, but at least now it's just a gentle breeze. All this hell I've been through, you could probably say I'm traumatized. After this drama, still this mastermind couldn't be compromised. Yo, tried to get me signed on the dotted lines. I'd rather get it from the gutter. Kids get handouts all the time. Couldn't even start around getting handouts all the time. That's not how I'm gonna get mine. That's not how I'm gonna get mine. Motherfucker, I ball for mine. Hitting pips, switching noggin. I'm killing kids like it's Columbine. Flipping switches, get dollar signs. Hey, yeah, I'm a motherfucking underdog. Hey, yeah, I'm a motherfucking underdog. Yeah, I'm a motherfucking underdog. Yeah, I'm a motherfucking underdog. Look.